Welcome, everyone. Today's CAS STNext coffee lecture is entitled Date Searching on the STNext platform. We're going to discuss dates, and more dates. You're going to find that during the lifetime of a patent, there can be many different dates associated with that particular document or invention. And then we'll also talk about how that can be considered when looking at it through the lens of a database, because you have to think about when that information came into the database and if that record has been updated to include additional information that may be relevant to what you're searching for. And of course, we're always going to have some search and display examples to help illustrate all these points. So if you think about the important dates in the life of a patent, you have the priority date, which is usually the first time the invention is applied for. And then you have all of your other application. They will have separate dates depending on when each is applied for in each of the separate patenting authorities. So you have all of those dates. Then you have the dates for the various publications. Published application that comes out on a different date than the granted patent. There may be even a C document with maybe corrections or reissues. Each one of those is going to have separate date as well. And then you also have to consider legal status dates. The patent is not static once it's been granted. There are things that can affect the lifetime or the validity of the document, and you may need to know about when those events occurred. So we're going to kind of look at all these different dates that are available in the lifetime of a patent. On STNext, you have the ability to search for priority dates and priority years. See the search qualifiers there are PRD for priority date and PRY for priority year. And then you have a separate search qualifier for application date and year, /AD and /AY. And then finally, for the various publications, you have a publication date and a publication year search options. Again, you use /PD for publication date and /PY for publication year. Now, you also have the ability in those patent family databases like CA Plus and DWPI and IMPAFAM to limit your searches for the dates for the basic document in those patent families. You can see that they have a separate search qualifier, /PD.B, the B for basic, obviously, right? And then for year, /PY.B. Now, we'll talk about some of the legal status dates a little bit later and when we get to the IMPADOC portion of this, but let's look at these first groups of dates, priorities, applications, and publications. On STN, the format is an 8-digit number, the first 4 for year, the middle, or I should say the 5th and 6th for month, and the 7th and 8th for day. If you just want to search year, then it's a 4-digit number as you see there. On STNext, you have the option to choose to search a range of dates, a greater than or a less than. And again, you can see some examples here. I ran a few examples in HCA Plus, and I used the same date, September 30th of 2022, but I used it in different fields. And understandably, we're going to get different records. So in this search capture, you can see that I searched that date as a priority date. In the record, one of the records that we captured, down there in the priority field in this HCA Plus record, you can see the dates do indeed match our search query. Then I search that same date, but this time in the application date, different set of documents, obviously. And you can see there why we captured this document, this Taiwanese document, and application of that September 30th, 2022 date. And then finally, I searched for documents that had this date where that was their publication. And so you can see this particular document here with the publication date of interest. So got to make sure you got your right search qualifier for what you're looking for. Now, I also just want to show you a couple other examples. The first one on the left-hand side, we're doing a date range, and we're also limiting it to basic documents only. And that's what you see in the example on the left-hand side. We have our display. It's got the date in the range of what we're looking for, and that is indeed the basic document for this patent family record. Over on the right-hand side, remember I said you also have the ability to search greater than or less than. So here is an example of searching, in this case, a publication year less than 1963, and we grabbed an old US document here. Notice that this date is not the date of the basic, right? It's searching the entire patent family field. So if you want to limit it to the basic, then you got to do what's on the left-hand side with the .b appendage to your search qualifier. Now, there might be times where you want to link a little bit of information with a publication date search. If you want to do that in the patent family databases like CA+, IMPAFAM, DWPI, you want to use the S operator to say that they're in the same sentence. Now, there's not a whole lot of information that's in that same sentence, but for example, you could search patent country. Here's an example where I'm searching US as a patent country, and I want that to be linked to this date of publications of, let's see, in this case, it'd be October 13th, 2022. So I run that search in HCA Plus, and you can see that there were indeed, in this case, 4 different documents in this patent family that all have the date in question and are all coming from the US. Notice how they're linked together. Whereas if I had used the AND operator, both data points would be there, but they wouldn't be linked together necessarily. Right? So when I use the AND operator, I'm getting a much larger set. And I say, get rid of the ones that I just saw on the previous slide. That's my not command. Search L4, not that set that we just saw on the previous slide. And we got about 3,000 additional records. So when you take a look at it, it's got the date. And yes, it does have a US document, but they're not associated with each other. So that's where you want to use things like the S operator for these types of linking. You could do it with country codes. You could also do it with country kind codes, right? You could, like you see the USA1, you could link that to a date if you so desire. Now, in certain databases, they also have the ability to search what's called the earliest priority date or year. Because if you think about it, some of these records will have more than one priority number, which means they can have more than one priority date. And if there is more than one, sometimes it's preferential to choose to look at just the earliest date of those multiple priority dates. That would help with analysis, right? So you would see that record only once, as opposed to if there were, let's say, 2 priorities, you count it once for one date, you count it again for the second date. So you're counting your invention not once, and that could throw off your counts when you're trying to look at statistical analysis. So by limiting it to just one per record, right? One priority date, one priority year per record, and it's the earliest, that will give you a more accurate picture of what kind of statistics you're looking for. Now, this is not available in every database on STN. It's available in the IMPADOC, IMPAFAM databases. Now, if you want to search a similar type of idea in the CA Plus databases, you can use their search qualifier PRD.B for priority date of the basic, or PRY.B for priority year of the basic. Right? So you can use that. It's a different search qualifier than what's in the other databases that we have here. CA Plus is a different search qualifier. And again, you can use this in combination with other fields and then use this for your statistical analysis. I'll give you an example here. This came out of the Empadoc database. And what I did was I ran a search for coronavirus or the word COVID to appear in the title of the record. And I wanted a priority first year. That's the way I kind of think of that search qualifier. PR for priority, Y for year, F for first. Um, you can see that I ended up with 7,381 patent records out of Empadoc DB. If I said analyze by PRC, it would give me every priority country in the record. I only want the first one that's associated with that 2020 date. So I have the ability to also use the PRCF. I know that's a mouthful. That stands for the first priority country. And so that's what's matching here my priority year first entry. Right? In other words, imagine I have a record, it's got a US that has a 2020 priority year, and then it has a German document that has a 2021 priority year in the record. It would only look at the 2020 information and it was associated with the US. It would not give a count for Germany. That's how this works. So that's why it's giving you a clean count. It's giving you one count per record. And you can see the results of my analysis here of that priority first country. China and then US, and then it drops off dramatically to European, Korean, wipeout, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, now the other thing I should mention is when you're searching dates on STNext is it has the ability to process large amounts of data. So it's kind of hard to break the limits. I don't want anybody to test this too much, but it can actually look for large amounts of dates intersected with other sets. So here is an idea. I've got a set of, again, I'm using my corona or COVID concepts. There's my first set. And then I said, give me everything with the publication date prior to 2023, June 28th. Well, you can imagine this is a CA Plus search, how much information they have prior to the date that we show here of June 28th, 2023. They have patents that go back, I think, to 1907 in some places. Most of them are back to 63, but then you've got all your non-patent literature as well. So there is a lot of pre June 28th, 2023 records in the database. And yet it did not give you, the error message. It was able to process this and come to a final set of interest here. This is one of those records. I said it had to be anything before that date in 2023. There's COVID in the title, and you can see over there in the patent information, you've got a couple of US published applications that are inside the date that we're looking for. So now we've looked at dates of publication, dates of priority, that kind of information. But now we have to kind of flip it a little bit and talk about dates of availability. And this is not when a document is published, but this is when can you gain access to it. So if you're looking at a particular database, you have to say, well, when did this record come into the database? Right? Or when was the record updated to include the information that is of interest to me? That is also of interest. So, a couple things to notice on this slide. Date that the information becomes available in a particular database is usually not the same day as publication. They got to take time to process it. So, for example, when does the database producer actually get the information? Do they get it the same day? Do they get it, the next day? Does it take a while? Each patenting authority to each database producer may have a different time lag as to when that information becomes available. So it's not all available the day of publication to a database producer. And then once they get it, well, what are they doing with it? Are they just going to whip it into the database and it's done? Or are they going to be one of those databases that takes the time to standardize the information? Maybe they need to index the information, create abstracts, and that all takes time. And they may not put the record in until they have some of that information ready to go. But maybe they put it in with some of it ready to go, and then they update the record to make it even better. And that it may be a way that you would capture it where you hadn't before. So you have to remember that these database records are usually dynamic. They're not static. The database can say, producer can say, oh, I need to add more information here. I need to update the indexing. So updating a record can be just as important as when the record is actually entered into the database. Again, the reason for that being, let's say that they realize they need to add an extra 5 compounds to a record that they had indexed. Well, one of those 5 compounds may be the one you were looking for, and you searched it, 2 weeks ago, it wasn't there, and you searched it today, and it would be there. So updating these records can also be as important as when the records came into the database. All right, so there are a lot of different search qualifiers here, or bits of information that are available depending on each database. Each database's information in terms of update is quite different. Let's start with entry date. Entry date is the date that the record was first introduced into the database, and then you can see there a sub bullet point. This date does not change unless, well, I remember there was a time where we had to reload one of the databases, and it basically became a new database. So if you had searched it before, it would not recognize your previous captures. And so like all the accession numbers had changed. And because of that, the entry dates became the date of the new reload. So in that extremely rare case, the entry date was not, shall we say, the original date that the information was available. Again, I think that was a rare thing that happened. Usually the entry date, the database is fine. So the entry date is when that record first comes into the database. As I mentioned, each database has its own series of update fields. So you want to go into a database of interest and just type in the command help update. Then you have to decide what is the correct code for what you're searching. This will become critically important for manual alerts and also automatic alerts. If you get the right update code, it will really make your search strategies that much cleaner and still comprehensive. You won't miss anything. Just to give you a taste for what I mean by the various entry dates, update dates that you have available. This is part of what you can see in the help update from DWPI. So we have an entry date. That's like I said, happens once, shouldn't change. And then you have different update dates. You can see that the /UP covers new records or update records except for citations. And then you have UPP for update patent family. Over there on the right-hand side for their polymer indexing, an update for their chemical coding, an update for their index terms. Then they have updates related to the citation information. We go to the next slide. Oh, I'm not going to go through all this, but you can see that they have an update for a lot of the different fields, the Derwent abstract, the CPCs, the Japanese. So you could tailor an alert to say, look, I only want to see this record if they've updated their index terms, or they've only updated their CPCs, or they've only updated their patent assignees. You do that. There's also the updates that are available for the Derwent member information. You'll see that on the right-hand side. What I'm trying to convey here is that for some databases, there can be dozens, as we see here, dozens of help update codes that you can use for this. Here's an example. I just want to show you a difference here. This is CA plus. Now you can see that update here has a different definition than it did over in DWPI. They kind of have the same thing here with UPP and entry dates, but they also can have different update codes as well for their records. And again, this is only part of their update code. And then finally, I just grabbed a little bit from IMPAFAM. Again, there was more than this, but there is for the patent family databases quite a number of different updates, and you really want to take a moment here if you're going to use these update codes to make sure that you got the right one. And as well, I'll cut to the final slide. If you ever have a question about this, please feel free to contact the CAS help desks. They will guide you through this. They're quite expert in this field. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to them. Their emails are going to be on the last slide, so don't worry, you'll have their contact information. Update dates versus publication dates. So if you had a search that you ran somewhere in the past, you know what date you did it, you might want to say, okay, well, let me just find any records that are newer than that date. Well, that's probably not your best search strategy because as we've learned, they can go back, the database producers can go back and adjust a record that's been in the database for a while. They can update it. They can include additional information. Again, especially if you're in a patent family information. New records come in that are associated to an existing patent family. They will not bring in just the patent number, but they may bring in new patent assignee information or new inventor information or new class codes. So even though the record's been in the database for a while, these updates may make the record relevant for you when you haven't captured it in the past. So update codes may be the better way to go. Now, again, the trick is to know which is the right one. UP will get most, but not all of the updates. I should have mentioned that everything we've talked about here today is valid pretty much across all the databases on STNext. That strategy is available for every database that has date information. Now, if you've got a non-patent literature, it's only going to have publication dates. It's not going to have priorities and applications, but everything else remains the same. You can search in the same fashion. You'll get the same results. Again, when we're talking about patent families, especially CA plus DWPI, you want to consider using the /UPP as your update code that if you want to find new records or new family members to existing records. All right, let's do an example here. So we got this structure. We ran it way back August 3rd of this year. And we ran it in registry, ran it in HCA plus, we ran it in DCR, DOP index. Only interested in patents. We don't need any non-patent literature for this example. We gave it to our patron on that day, ran it August 3rd, gave to them that day. Well, they came to you yesterday and said, I need you to update this for me. Okay. So we're going to update this search. We hope we kept the search from before, right? We don't have to draw it again. Remember on STNext, once you draw something on your STN ID, it is there forever. It is there until you specifically delete it. So consider that. So hopefully we've got it. We're just going to upload that structure in the registry, going to run a substructure search, and then we're going to go in the HCA plus, simply search that registry search. In this case, that's going to be L2, and we're going to limit it to patent documents. That's going to create set L3, and then we're going to do search L3, and instead of any publication date or anything like that, anytime the indexing has been updated, that's where the registry numbers would lie from that registry search in the IP field. So we're looking for an update in the IT field, anything beyond that date of August 3rd, 2024. Once we've done that, we're going to repeat the same kind of strategy in the Derwent databases of DCR and WP Index. So I've loaded my structure in the registry, ran a full substructure search, and then I go into HCA Plus and limit that to patent documents, get 381 patent family records. Then I did give me anything from set L3 with an update of the index terms beyond the date of interest, August 3rd, 2024, and I get 37 records. I always want to look at the last one. And in this case, you can see that it's older than the date that we were interested in. So if we had done a publication search, we would not have captured this record. I'm not sure why it took this long to get into the database, but this is something of interest here. We would not have captured it with anything other than this correct update searching limitation. Going to imitate that search in DCR as well. Do a substructure search on the same structure, don't have to upload it again. And get 50 records in DCR, go into WP Index, that correlates to 159 of their patent family records. Again, do the limitation of the update of index terms. Luckily, in this case, the same qualifier applies. DCR entries are going to be found in the IT field, so UPIT is indeed the correct update code you want to use. And we're using the same date greater than August 3rd of 2024. Get 21 records here. Look at the oldest one here. And again, it's older than the date that we had originally run this search. We ran it back in August. Well, this is a June record. Has all the right indexing, but it wasn't available in that previous time period. So again, that's why using update codes gets you a cleaner set results whenever you want to do any sort of manual or automatic alert. All right, now we're going to switch gears. Now we got our documents. Now let's got to look at some legal status. And we're going to focus on legal status. That I would say most of this is post issuance, but I think it applies to during the prosecution examination as well. All right, so let's talk first about entry dates. You think there'd be one, but there's multiple in the IMPADOC and IMPAFAM databases. There is an entry date for each document in the record. So if you think about a database like IMPADOC-DB, which has, I think they call it all of the publications from the same patenting authority. So I'm going to pick on the US here for a second. You get an A1 document, you get a B2 document. Well, the A1 document would get an entry date, the B2 document would get an entry date, and they're in the same record. They would have one national record entry date. That's the EDP. Expanding that out, if you think about patent families, this might not even be the basic. This might not be the earliest published. This just might be one in a gigantic patent family. So that patent family also has an entry date. Those three dates can all be different, right? Well, I would assume that the entry date for the national record has to be one of the entry dates for each document in the record. One of those is going to be the same, but there could be differences as well. And the entry date for the international record could be the same or different as well. Let's look at a couple examples here. This is just simply a US document that has an A1 published application, B2 granted patent. You look at the display here, which I display field is PI, UP all. So that's patent information and all the update information. You can see that they have an entry date, the ED field, for each publication. But there is one EDP. This is the entry date for the national family. So this would be the earlier date of the two, you can see. that it's 2021, October 14th, same as this document here, not this one here. Then there is also an entry date for the international patent family, and you can see it's even earlier than the 2021 record. So there was a document out there in the world, maybe a white paper document, that was published in, I say published, that entered the IMPA doc or IMPA FAM database on January 11th, 2018. So obviously the invention was available then, even though these US documents were not. Then you have dates in the legal status part of the IMPA doc and IMPA FAM databases. We're going to focus on three of these. One is the legal status date, where the information appears in an official gazette, and that's given the search qualifier LSD. Then there is the date the action is added to the database. This is like an individual update code. So every entry has its own update code, if you will. And then additionally, occasionally, there can be an additional date, which is the date that the particular legal status action goes into force. If you look at, this is a sample record of IMPA-DOC. On the far left-hand side, that is the date that it appeared in an official gazette. In this case, that's November 11th of 2024. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, that is when this information became available in this database, legal status update date. So looks like it was about 10 days later, right? It appeared in the official gazette November 11th, and it showed up in the database November 21st. In this particular legal status entry, there is a third date, which you can see in the middle here with that third red box. That is the legal status date in force. That's whenever this particular action took place and considered to be in effect in that particular patenting authority. All right, so that is dates, and more dates searching on STNext. As you can imagine, you have to be careful to make sure that you're searching in the field that you're interested in, priorities, applications, publication dates. Make sure if you're using entry dates and update dates, especially with update dates, that you're using the correct code, your search qualifier. As I mentioned, each database does have its own series of update codes. So go into the particular database and find the information there, help update. It's going to give you that. And then finally, it's a very powerful tool. It really allows you to focus your strategy and feel confident that you're not missing relevant information.